Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all well and that you have had a wonderful weekend. And for those of you who were up to the early hours or indeed the late hours on Thursday night, like some of us, that you have recovered. I'm still recovering, even though I've had a rest. And what will take a little longer is to recover from all of the batterings I've had on mainstream media. It's absolutely amazing how hostile they can be and the lengths they will go to and what they will say just to attack you. But that's par for the course. And if I needed to suffer that again to fight for Northampton and for what I believe, then I would do. Ultimately, people who know me and people who can see through the filthy smog can work things out for themselves. So, tonight's topic: Northampton Town Centre, the death of the High Street. Even though I am focusing on the Northampton Town Centre, this applies to dying town centres up and down the country. They are an essential part of our way of life. We cannot allow them to just wither away and die, but they will do unless we take drastic action. And without them, we will we will cease to be communities and towns and villages and cities in the sense that we have been for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. So we must rescue our town centres, our high streets. But how can we do this? I'm sure this is the same even if you are in other parts of the country. If you walk down a high street, certainly if you walk uh, into town here in Northampton, you would think that the only reason people are in town is to buy fried chicken, to buy a scratch card, or to get their hair cut. In fact, I can't understand how there are so many barbershops in Northampton. They are literally just everywhere. What are they doing? How can they make any money? Well, I'll rephrase that. They cannot be making any money. My family was in hairdressing. In fact, I still have two cousins in Northampton who have had barbershops. One of them was my uncle's that opened in 1966, and the other one, and obviously his son runs it, and the other one was opened by the same uncle in 1990, and his son now runs that after my uncle passed away. Um, I'm sure that they're not having an easy time of it, but I can tell you that I know the business inside and out, and these barbershops are not making money from cutting hair. So, what are they doing there? The same applies to many of these takeaways. Once again, my parents had a takeaway. See, there are advantages to having Cypriot parents and coming from Cypriot family because, there are certain industries that are just sort of ingrained into us. Um, and once again, I can tell you that many of these takeaways just could not possibly make any money. It's just not possible. So once again, what are they doing there, and where is the money coming from? It's a bit like assessing the Labour Party's spending, isn't it? The same question crops up. Where is the money going to come from? Well, I'm sure we will find out soon enough to our peril. Now, in Northampton, I believe that certain steps need to be taken very, very quickly. It can be done, but it's not just a case of encouraging people to open shops in the town because they will close again. Access to the town is not easy. The council treat motorists like cash cows, and it's all about how much they can charge them, how often they can, or rather, how many motorists they can fine in a day. It's almost as though the army of wardens or whatever they are called nowadays are on commission or have targets because effectively they are there to just give out as many tickets as possible, and that culture must change. That's the first thing that needs to be done. Secondly, we need to squeeze out all of these low grade businesses, from barbershops to continental stores to charity shops. All of these businesses need to be squeezed out. We need to focus on having retail stores, curiosity shops, the type of thing that people want to go and visit, and the type of shops that will sell the types of products that are not found in tacky out of town retail parks, because the retail parks all sell the same carbon copy, franchise tat, one way or another. That's all they are. These big chain stores through the 70s and 80s, they choked all of the small stores in the high streets, put them out of business increasingly, and then they gradually began to move out to retail parks, leaving our town centres to die. Add to that the way that the councils have behaved, the lack of access to town centres, increasing crime, and the fact that people don't feel comfortable to walk around, and there you have a recipe for the death of the town centre. It is almost as though the uh, the macro planning for our town centres is actually being managed by Amazon, who are behind the scenes making an effort to shut down our high streets so we buy everything from them. And I believe it's time that we turned the tables on them. Now, if you have no idea how much the sales of Amazon are in the UK, then I suggest you look it up. Last year, I believe it was somewhere in the region of 26 billion. That's 26 billion and growing. I'm sure it will be more this year. With Google being around 2.5 billion, Facebook around 2 billion, and there are others who are also many in excess of 1 billion. That is sales in the UK from companies who contribute very, very little, because they have an army of clever accountants to pay as little as possible. And even though there is VAT, VAT is an end user tax, and it is effectively just the consumer who pays VAT all the way along. It is normally reclaimed. So we need to do something, first of all, to ensure that they make their fair and share contribution to the UK economy or to the tax coffers. Secondly, to level out the playing field between these massive online retailers and small retailers in town centres. If we could engineer a situation where we had lots of small stores in our high streets and town centres that had no business rates, that had low overheads, and did have some sort of competitive, if not advantage, but at least the level playing field, that is when people would begin to consider returning to the high street, because they would be able to see a whole range of shops with a whole range of products that they can see, they can touch, they can try on, or ask about while they are there, as opposed to ordering something online and hoping for the best. But how can we do this? Well, one proposal, which I had considered this in the past as well, and by coincidence, it's a policy that Reform had, is to add 5%, 4 or 5% sales tax for online sales, and that is above a certain amount. So this shouldn't apply to people who run a small eBay shop or anything like that. But beyond a certain amount, I believe that there should be a sales tax, online sales tax, that is charged and paid for at source at the time of the sale. And with these large companies, if they sell in the UK, they should pay in the UK. And there is a lot of scope with online with sales tax for online sales, if especially in the area of the smaller products, which is often by far the vast majority of their sales, whether it's a phone cover or something like that. That's a lot of their sales, and books and that sort of thing. So effectively, that could raise quite a bit of money. But how much would it raise? Well, uh, a 5% sales tax on Amazon sales last year would raise 13 billion. That's just 5%, and that's just Amazon. So collectively, imagine how much could be raised, and that's just with 5%. And 5% is nothing. It wouldn't even be noticed in the cost of things. It's negligible, certainly at the lower end. And they won't go anywhere. These companies won't stop selling in the UK. While there are sales, but they will be here to sell. But we need to take action to ensure that people in the high street can compete. Otherwise, we won't have any high streets left very, very soon. They've nearly gone already. Let me just go to your comments and questions here. So first, no one in particular. Hello, Anthony. Hello, chat. And hello, no one in particular. Thank you for joining me. Town centre unsafe for lone female. I never go there. Needs a police presence. Absolutely, I will get that in to that in a little while. Yes, yes, they are. That's exactly why they are there. But it's not just barbershops. Many of these businesses are, and it is not very difficult to establish what they are doing. It really isn't. Russian lakes should never have been allowed. Is it true old M&S and BHS stores are turning into flats in Amazon Street? Okay, yes, agreed first. And M&S and BHS, I believe so, but they probably won't be. Well, let's put it this way. You and I probably won't have first dibs at them. Evening, watching from my bed tonight as I'm not feeling too good, so I won't be speaking, just watching. Sorry to hear that, David. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you feel better soon. And hope you not in too much pain. Just listening is a good idea. Absolutely, absolutely. And Ian, put some roads into the town, stop pedestrianisation everywhere. People are lazy and don't want to walk everywhere. People go to retail parks because you don't pay to park and the shops are right there. Okay, not sure of your ages, how long you've been in Northampton, how well you know Northampton. I would love to see Abington Street from Radio Northampton opened all the way down to, uh, if not all the way down to All Saints Church, certainly halfway. And I believe that there should be short stay, free parking, but short stay, 1 hour to max, so that people can pop into town to buy something. Um, Ultimately, all of this nonsense, it's just being moved. The traffic that would be in town just goes somewhere else. That's all that happens, and we don't have a town centre. Definitely, we need a police presence. We need an increased police presence because we have an increasing element who don't leave women alone. And unfortunately, as you know, we now have a government who won't really address this. Unfortunately, it will get worse, but it may well be that it needs to get worse before people finally fight back. If you've been watching what's been going on in France, the left have literally pulled out, I believe, over 200 candidates so that the other left candidate can get more votes, so that they can basically outflank Marine Le Pen, keeping the left in control. Again, with Europe, maybe Europe needs another few years of the left until they finally realize that they have to fight back or they will be basically eradicated. But that's another matter. In our high streets, though, we have too many predatory males, and their behavior is increasingly ignored. In fact, if you were to be pestered as a woman, you have to be very careful what you say when they are hassling you, threatening you, intimidating you, because the police are more likely to prosecute you for what you say than to prosecute them for what they are doing. Keep in mind, I don't care how politically incorrect it is, but many of these people are here on as part of a religious war. That is why they are here. And anybody who does not believe that, anybody who can't see that, is beyond salvation, really, because it is crystal clear. The evidence is there. We have never, ever suffered as much or as many attacks on women and young girls as we have in the last few years. And the vast majority of the perpetrators are people of a certain type. And yet, no government, certainly this one, the last one, was no better. They would not publish figures of crime by ethnicity or by nationality or anything like that, for obvious reasons. We know the answers by the way that they have behaved, because if at the top of the offenders list it was white males, they would have published it just like that immediately, and they would keep publishing it. And the BBC would keep telling us white males are guilty of whatever it may be. The fact that they don't means that that's not the case. So, yes, we need the presence of police, but the police need to do their job. Will they be able to ever do their job when we have elected police commissioners who are more concerned to pandering to their voters and instructing their officers to follow woke procedure than actually addressing the law? If somebody breaks the law, everybody should be equal under the law. And if anybody breaks the law, doesn't matter who they are, then they should be arrested and they should be dealt with depending on the evidence, or if the evidence is strong enough to charge them and for them to then go on to court. This is not what is happening. So that's another issue. So we need, first of all, we need shops in town centres to have, if not a competitive advantage, but for the market to be balanced, because they can never even match large online sellers like Amazon, let alone compete with them. And they need to be able to do that. People need to have access to small, low-cost retail units that are used for retail and retail only. Thirdly, we need access to the town centres without motorists being cash cows. And fourth, we need proper policing throughout the town centre so that people feel safe to walk about. That could make a big difference. However, let me just take a look at the next questions and I'll continue. Yes. Do you know anything about the Muslim man given permission to open a Christian school? I am very worried. No. Whereabouts is that? I will look into it, try and find out more. That's interesting. Worrying, rather, not interesting. I have driven down Abington Street. I'm 68. Okay, well, yes. Wasn't it wonderful? So you would obviously remember the nuns' school in Abington Street before it was knocked down. You will remember the Masonic Hall before it was knocked down, where the Grosvenor Centre is now. You'll remember when the Chronicle and Echo was in the Market Square. You will remember the Market Square before it was all ripped up. And whatever happened to that statue that was in the middle of the Market Square? Rumour has it that, because it just disappeared, that it ended up in some councillor's garden, but I don't know why they decided to rip up that Market Square. I'll never know. Christian school in Northampton, sorry. I'm going to look into that. I will do. Parking enforcement till 10:30 at night in poor areas. Northampton Council morally bankrupt. I'll give you an example. The lower car park off Peters Way, where Home Bargains is, there are two levels. There's the upper level in front of Argos, Home Bargains, and there's a lower level which extends down to Peters Way. That lower level, they have played musical parking hours several times over the years. So what they do is they purport to be encouraging people to come into town, so it's free parking after 6 p.m. They keep that for a few weeks or months, and they've done this 2 or 3 times, so people habitually begin to park there after 6. And then they quietly change it that you have to pay for parking until midnight or 11:30. And the last time they changed it, I actually spotted half a dozen of these vultures in their yellow waistcoats, high vis jackets rather, and they literally waited for the car park to fill and they descended and ticketed the whole lot in one go. How immoral is that? Why can't they allow people to come into town and generate money rather than suffocate the town and kill it off? I think Abington Street opened to traffic some years ago for a few hours a day, 90s, I think. It actually had, you could drive through, you could come up past St Giles Terrace. Is it St Giles Terrace? Up onto Abington Street, and then come along Abington Street, and then you had to turn right and go up past Marks and Spencers. That was in the 90s. As you turned right, there was a coffee shop on the right, and Marks and Spencers. Was it Panache that was up the alleyway beforehand there? Anyway, police have their hands tied. Yes, I don't actually, to be fair, I don't blame the officers who are out trying to do their job, because they are under instruction. And yes, their hands are tied. It is at the top. And this is how the woke brigade operate. They go for the top so that the orders come down. In the media, in the police, in government, everywhere. And that is how they have managed to enforce so much of their weird and woke and perverse ideologies on the whole of society. Why are people allowed to designate streets as Sharia zones and trying to get pubs shut down in that area? Because we allow it. That is why. Because we allow it. It will never stop. This is what people don't understand. It won't stop. If you agree to something being done in one street, pubs, etc., they'll start on the next one. If you give a concession for one thing, they'll demand a concession for something else. It will never end. The only way it would end in their head is if the entire country was under Sharia law. But guess what they would do then? They would turn on each other and they would just tear shreds out of each other, and this would end up like the places they came from, effectively. That's what would happen. Burglaries out of control in my area of Abington Street, Abington Avenue end. Yes. This is happening more and more. What concerns me is that the way that shoplifting has gone, it's taken a step further. It's not shoplifting now. It is blatant burglary. They walk in, they don't just take something quietly and go, as used to be the case with shoplifters. They blatantly walk in and intimidate and or threaten the staff or the security to take what they want and go. This is just one step away from open burglary by intimidation, with threats, with knives, with weapons of anyone, anywhere at any time because they have been allowed to get away with it. And I really don't see things getting any better for the foreseeable, I'm afraid. I believe that they will get significantly worse. Um, Drink driving and no insurance, no license is the same. Uh, yes, of course, the amount of people that don't have don't have a license, don't have insurance, and obviously that has also increased because of speed cameras, ULEZ, these sorts of things. Um, so there are more and more people who have a car and it's not insured. They may not have a license, and if they do, might not be a UK license. There's not much that the police can do about it. What's the worst that they can do? Can they check out somebody's driving license who's visiting from another country? I don't know. I don't know what the facilities are to be able to do that accurately. Perhaps throughout Europe, but beyond Europe, what is the actual legal status? I'm not really sure. But ultimately, we need police on the streets. We need effective and vigorous stop and search, and that needs to be across the board. No excuses, no pandering to anybody who's claiming that it is done on racial lines or religious lines. Across the board, white, blue, brown, black, whatever you are, youngsters of a certain age get stopped and they get searched. Anybody found with a weapon on them, they must face a custodial sentence. Anybody guilty of a non-violent crime, then there are alternatives. One of the most effective deterrents for many non-violent crimes, of course, you can't be for violent crimes, is actually tagging. Because if they're tagged, if they're under curfew, and every time they break their curfew, they end up getting picked up, thrown in jail for a couple of nights, the inconvenience, the humiliation, the living life by the clock, it actually has it can be really effective. And I have had this direct from a magistrate that there are many youngsters who would rather have 2, 3, 4 weeks inside than have a tag for 6 months or longer, because because of the way it simply rules their life. They can't go anywhere. And we do have the technology so that when someone is tagged, they cannot go near certain areas. They cannot go into the town centre. They cannot be out after 8 o'clock at night, etc. But whatever methods we use, we need to use these tools to reduce crime, and we need to deal with it now, immediately, because the next step, as these youngsters get more brave, is unthinkable. Sorry, out of control driving offences in Abington too. Yes, I am aware of that. Uh, it is the same in Kingsthorpe. As you know, we've had 2 or 3 fatalities due to knife crime in Kingsthorpe. One right in the middle of the Harbour Road, opposite in the Cock Hotel in the island in the middle. A youngster. Um, this has to stop, but it won't stop unless somebody has the courage to stand up and simply say, we are going to do this and this and this, but nobody does. Ultimately, all they do is say what they think people want to hear, and the people, they keep quiet because they have been convinced that if they speak up, they're the only one. No, you're not the only ones. You are the majority. It is just that these people have made you feel as though you are the minority so that you will keep quiet. And over the next 2, 3 years, will we see increased blasphemy laws, which will effectively mean that we can't say anything, but certain people still can say whatever they like? That's how it seems to be working nowadays. It's just unfortunate that far too many people out there really, really are just blinded with ignorance. And this is what they predators play on. And we are talking about predators. They are predatory in every way, socially, logistically, ethnically, morally, culturally. I'm afraid not, but this is the lesson that we're teaching many people, because many of these people out there have absolutely no respect for law and order. And the problem is this: it's not the police generally that keep crime down, it is what the police represent. Two police officers walking down the street would not be able to do anything against lots and lots of violent young people. But it is their presence and what they represent and the fact that they represent the law. But we are fast approaching the point where the law does not mean anything to many people. We have seen how people have blatantly broken the law in many different ways in large numbers, and they get away with it. On the contrary, not only do they get away with it, they are rewarded. And this is happening in Northampton as well. And we are not far off the point where we as white British people, culturally Christian, if not practicing, will not just be in many ways second class citizens, or that we will come second to those who shout the most, but we will be openly abused and bullied and threatened, and nobody will do anything about it. That is what concerns me. The link to drug dealers, county lines must be broken. I do believe that drugs is a major part of what's going on in Northampton. Northampton does seem to be behind the scenes a major, a major sort of drugs. I don't know what the right word would be, but centre, distribution point. I don't know, but drugs do play a large part, and we are also suffering from out of town burglaries, where they come into town and just basically openly just break into houses and take what they can, and they just don't care less. They literally do not care less. When we get to the point that people will stop in a main road in a van and somebody will get underneath a Toyota Prius, jack it up and get underneath rather, and just basically take a cordless grinder out and take the catalytic converter off and steal it and get in a van and drive off in full view. There could be a car sat in the traffic behind them. They are so brazen with it. This is actually happening. I don't know that it's happened in Northampton, but it does happen in many other towns and cities, and it certainly happens a lot in London. Anarchy is allowed in a certain demographic. I'm afraid so. Citizen police force. If Labour defend the police like America's Biden administration wants, I don't know. I don't know what Labour are going to do. Really, really, I don't. Somehow, I don't see them as the party of law and order. Who knows? Let's wait and see. I just have a feeling that things are going to deteriorate further, and let's just see what they do, because they've already laid the foundations for what they plan to do, and it doesn't look good. They're definitely going to be trying to get money from every single possible source that they can. They're committed to expenditure that they have not budgeted for. They left everything out their manifesto. So I don't really see a great deal of money for urban regeneration, for our town centres, for policing, or any of that. I think that that will be at the bottom of the queue, which is tragic. Now, I'm not against mixed use redevelopment of town centres, as in retail, offices, residential. But once again, if urban areas, say for example, if you walk down Abington Street from Radio Northampton, on the right, a lot of those buildings are not particularly high. If they were if they were knocked down and they were rebuilt, and they could be 4 or 5 stories high, and there could be accommodation above and offices and then shops below. The problem is this: that if the town centre is redeveloped rather, but then the central government simply uses those apartments to actually house migrants, then they'll just turn the town centre into a ghetto, and then once again it will die. So it needs to be done correctly. Can it be done without all of the allegations of racism and everything that comes from the toxic left? It, only if the right person is behind it, because we are fast approaching the point that nothing like that can be done. And effectively, the population is on the run and have been for years. We just haven't admitted it. It's called white flight. In fact, people move further out, further out, and further out, and further out. This has been happening for years. People are already and have been for years being pushed out of their localities. There was a time in Northampton that many of these terrace streets were beautiful, clean streets. They're not like that anymore. But people have moved out, and then as the area they've moved to goes downhill, they move out even further, and so on and so forth. But eventually, we'll have nowhere to go, and we'll have to either face the music and live in the society that we've allowed to evolve around us, or fight against it. But who'll be left to fight? By that point, we'll just be a broken society, that with people who can't speak up, who actually don't know what they're fighting for anymore. And possibly that's not by accident, but more by design. Defend, yes. Defund, yes. Predictive text driving me nuts. Yes, it's got me into trouble once or twice in the past, I can tell you that for certain. But I find it very, very sad, because when I'm thinking about Northampton Town Centre, for example, I'm trying to think about it positively. I'm trying to think about it constructively. I'm trying to think of what can be done rather than what can't, and what it could be rather than what it is not. But until these issues are addressed, nothing will change. I can tell you this for now. Throughout my entire campaign and before, not one person in the media approached me and asked me to talk about an issue. They like doing these so-called debates, but they're pointless. When you have 4 or 5 people and you have 1 hour, and you're going to have 4 or 5 questions, and each person is going to make a quick answer, 30 seconds, and then you might get another 30 seconds to respond to the others, and then you move on to the next question. How on earth is that a debate? It is just a token gesture charade. A proper debate would be an hour or two to discuss crime, an hour or two to discuss the NHS, an hour or two to discuss healthcare, and so on and so forth. And not just once, but again to come back to it afterwards and hopefully move forward. And if people discuss things constructively with different points of view, be they from different parties, that's fine. The winners are the public. But if you look at these insulting charades that we've been presented with on TV, and you have two grown-up, middle-aged women squabbling like schoolgirls in a playground over something so trivial that I actually don't even remember what they were squabbling about. And it's just the one-upmanship show. It is who can actually come out with the best dig that's going to be the dig of the night or the quote of the night. It's not about solutions. It's not about debate. It's not about solving anything. It's purely about scoring some points for themselves for their campaign. That's all it's about. How does that help everyday people? Is it no wonder that people do not engage with politics? And is it no wonder that we've had one of the lowest turnouts ever? And is it any wonder that we have a government that has actually had the lowest percentage, the lowest mandate of any government ever, lower total votes than Corbyn did, over 500,000 less votes, just 33% of the total number of votes, 20% of the total people eligible to vote, and it is portrayed as a landslide. It was not a landslide. It is a catastrophe. And this is why things are not done. Any debate that is a series of questions is not a debate. It's just a show. It's just a charade. It will never solve anything. It takes many hours of intense discussion and brainstorming and arguing to come up with solutions to improve our town centres or our healthcare or education or anything like this. But people who really do care would be happy to do that. But the media are not concerned about solving issues. They're just concerned about their headlines. And that's what's really sad. Cut business rates, absolutely. Business rates is one of the most unfair of all taxes because effectively it is a tax on trying to earn a living. Because if you rent a shop and you fill it with whatever teapots that you wish to sell, if your shop falls into the rateable category, you have to pay rates whether you sell anything or not. And that is completely unfair. The threshold is £12,000, normally rateable value, and from £12,000 to £15,000, your tax, your allowance, I forgot the name of it now, so sorry. Your allowance basically falls on a sliding scale, and by 15,000 you pay the full amount of rates, which is X amount of whatever on the pound of whatever the rateable value of that property is. That is far too low, far too low. We also need many more smaller shops between 3 and 500 square feet, and some more between 500 and 1,000 square feet, so that people can afford to rent a shop. Somebody who maybe is a single parent can rent a shop and can open at 9:15 after they drop the children off, and maybe they can have somebody cover them when they have to go and pick the kids up and close at 5 or 6, and they can still make it pay. Then we could really have a proper functioning town centre with a variety of retail shops that would bring people into the town. And instead, we basically have the forerunner to RoboCop in our town centres, and that's so sad to see, because Northampton was such a beautiful place, and so many of these buildings have gone, and the character of the town is going, the culture is going, everything is is just going. And the question is, are we just going to accept defeat and give up, or are we going to try and fight to save our town? These are the questions that we need to ask, or these are the questions I'm asking you, because I'm in Kingsthorpe. I'm just a parish councillor in Kingsthorpe. There's very little that I can do in that regard, but I can certainly do a lot as an individual with a loud voice and a tremendous amount of determination and love for Northampton. So I don't want to see the town deteriorate anymore. I want to address crime and many other things which I'll cover in other videos, because as I said, I think we should stick to one topic. I'm trying to stick to one topic at a time so that I can cover it as best as I can, and I'm always happy to return to it. And if any of you have suggestions, and even if you want to arrange to meet to talk to me face to face about it, if you're local, I'm happy to do that, because there's only so much I can do, and I can't do it alone. But what I can do, and what I want to do, is to actually connect with people locally and inspire them, and perhaps collectively we then can do something about it. In fact, I'll change that. Collectively, we can most certainly do something about it, but we can't do it on our own. I certainly can't. Insulting charades must mean the consultations that WNC puts out with loaded questions with no option, and then ignores the result as they are not binding or virtue signalling. So, a bit like question time, eh? If we had PR and got the 98 seats, would we not have constituency candidates? Sorry for ignorance, but not understanding. Yes, we would, but the way that everyone's selected is different. I am preparing some slides so that I can cover this in the next couple of days in a bit more detail, how it sort of works. But basically, what happens then is the candidates are the one with the lowest amount of votes. You on your ballot don't just tick one person, you'll put them in order of preference, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can imagine it's much more work counting them all, because they've got to allocate the right number to so on and so forth. And then the one with the lowest vote gets knocked out, and then those votes are split equally. But overall, effectively, how it works is that, give or take, you end up with percentage of candidates reflecting the percentage of your votes. As it is now, you've seen what has happened. What are the odds that the Labour Party will be championing PR, considering the disproportionate amount of seats that they have? I would say very little. It all now depends on what happens over the next 2-3 years, because I don't think that they'll go the full term. I think that they will fall apart. There could be many by-elections, and I believe that the vast majority of by-elections, certainly on all the seats that they have taken from others, they will lose, because most of them are on a very small majority. I think in 90 odd seats, Reform came second, and in many of those seats, the majority was paper thin. In fact, I believe West Streeting has a majority of about 400 or 500 votes, or somewhere around there. So yes, they are built on very poor foundations, and unless they really manage to pull a rabbit out of the hat, and bring about positive changes, then at the next election there is every possibility that Labour could have a night that is very similar to the one the Conservatives had this just 3 days ago. So that is where PR works. But having said that, the irony is that although Reform are pushing for PR, looking at the results, looking at the number of votes and where they were, the amount of seats that Reform came second, with all the run up to the next election, whenever that may be, whether it's in 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, it may well be possible for Reform to make a massive impact just in the first past the post system. So who knows? Let's see. And again, the other champion of proportional representation, the Lib Dems, who do have a disproportionate amount of seats this time, more than they would get possibly under PR. Would they continue to champion it now, or would they just keep quiet because now they've got more seats? They wouldn't want to change it now. I don't know. That remains to be seen, doesn't it? We shall find out. In the fullness of time. But as far as the town centre goes, as far as Northampton goes, we are on borrowed time because it is rapidly turning into a ghetto. We need to address all of these places that are there for the purposes of money laundering. We need to address access to the town, and we need to ensure that we pressure the police to encourage or force them to have a police presence, not just in the town centre, but in all parts of the town, because crime will get worse, and every step that it deteriorates gets exponentially more dangerous for people. But from where we are now, the next step will be a very, very dangerous one that will impact people at a personal level in their homes as well as in the street. And I don't really want to see anywhere, let alone Northampton, but anywhere in the country deteriorate to that level. But unfortunately, there are parts of the country that are already ruled by gangs, and people are petrified. Parts of Birmingham are under the thumb of gangs, and people are terrified, whether they are in their homes, whether they are walking down the street, or even driving down the street, because we're at the point where if you cross the wrong person, then it could be fatal. I never thought I would see the day that the UK would deteriorate to this point, but sadly it has. And it's not just the UK. If you do keep an eye on what's happening in other parts of the world online, you wouldn't see it on the mainstream media, of course. Look at the problems that Paris has had with civil unrest, as well as other cities throughout Europe. So the question is, what is happening to these cities and the UK, and what is the common denominator? And I'm sure we can all figure out what the common denominator is. If we had PR and got, that's the last one, sorry. Same question again. Okay. So anyway, if you are local and you have any suggestions for me, or you'd like to discuss anything to do with the town centre or anything else in person, get in touch. Let me know. Happy to arrange to meet for a coffee and a chat. Would be my absolute pleasure. I'd like to meet more and more of you locally, face to face, and pick your brains, get some suggestions from you, because that's why I'm here, and that's what I would love to do. If I can help to get the ball rolling with something, I know that I'm not going to be able to find a solution that I can personally put in place or pressure myself, but I can certainly try and get enough of us together to possibly get the ball rolling with something, one way or another. That would be huge, and that would be something constructive and something that I would really like to do. So please feel free to get in touch with any suggestions or ideas, or if you want to meet for a chat, happy to do that. And as for the rest of you, everybody else, thank you for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your evening. What is it now? 10:30, and I would like you to join me again tomorrow. I can't remember what the topic is tomorrow. Let me just have a look. Totally forgot. Tomorrow we'll be talking about from super majority to super collapse. Yes. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone. Thank you for the chat. Yeah, absolutely. Hope you feel better soon, David. No one in particular. Have a good night, and everyone else. And I will see you again very, very soon. Thank you. Bye bye for now. Bye.